Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits.
That was an interesting way to start this off. Well, that's the rest of our show. Facebook.
Good night, everybody.
Twitch has officially canceled us now. Bye. I didn't even realize we're both wearing turtle hats.
Yep. Figured why not.
Yep. And actually, they've been censored a time or two before.
Nope.
Actually, because of the violence on there. Actually, what's her name? The girl that played April in the first movie didn't come back in the second movie because she complained about the violence too much.
Really? Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of that. I was thinking back when the 80s cartoon was rolling, and for some reason in Europe, at least at that time, you couldn't say the word ninja.
Yeah, was that Europe or was that the UK?
One of the two, where it's like, yeah, they had to rebrand the whole thing as a Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
like,
ninja was like too violent or something. Now they can say it, but
I was gonna say, if that show is too violent for you, then maybe just don't leave your bubble any more than you have to.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was actually that and Michelangelo's nunchucks. They couldn't use the nunchucks.
Really?
They actually had to give him a different weapon, and I guess they didn't have to redo all of the animation, but the weapon had to be out. So anytime he was swinging something, they had to give it with like some other kind of weapon.
He just slapped everybody with pizza. It was fine.
That would be awesome. But yeah, they actually had to change that, and they had to there was a couple scenes in the movies that they had to take out because there was a few scenes where he had the nunchucks going, or he had them in his hands, and they couldn't cut that scene.
Yeah. Oh, I think I know what scene that was too. It's where the Foot show up and they're fighting in the middle of that fire.
Yeah.
No, it's right before the fire starts.
Yeah, something like that. But there was one where it was like he had the final hit or whatever to the Foot Clan, and it was with the nunchuck, and then he walked away doing this, and they actually had to take the nunchucks out, or they had to cut that scene because
that was one of the funnier parts, was when they're just kind of one-upping each other, and Michelangelo says
So that's how we're starting the show.
Yep. I just right out the gate, I just wanted to nip it in the bud. Those were the 7 dirty words you cannot say on television.
There's actually a Blink 182 song. It was from one of their live albums where they were actually all those words are like the only words that they say in the song.
Yeah, it's not quite as elaborate, but Psycho Stick has a song where they just say every lyric is fuck.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find this. Yeah, it was actually called the Cussing Song.
The Cussing Song. Should I pull up my reference then?
Yeah, let's make sure that I found this here. All right, I found it. Let me put this up. And I'm going to present my screen for this.
Yeah, just present.
Got it.
Your screen, you got it. Did you share the tab?
Did I what?
Did you share the tab? Because that's how the audio will come through.
I thought so. Let me see.
All right, we'll try it.
Present, and yeah, we got. Okay, you got it. Okay, yeah, I don't know how much we're gonna be able to do this on Facebook. I'm just only gonna play a little snippet of it, but here, this is an actual song. It's called Blink 182 Cussing Song.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Motherfucker, tits, fart, turn, twat. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits, fart, turn, twat.
Can we have this be our theme song?
It should be a theme song for something.
Seriously.
Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker. Motherfucker, tits, fart, turd, and twat. I fucked your mom.
Oh my god, can this be our theme song now?
that actually it probably should a lot of times.
All right, yeah. So my example is it's a more classical music.
Yes.
Hold on, I need to do this proper.
So there's actually 68 words that you can't say on American television, but those are the ones that will definitely get you banned. I mean, a lot of these other ones they can, I think, depending on the story, they can get away with, but or
If I
depending on how they do it.
interlude with a snippet of classical music.
Mm. Yeah. Wow.
Want more?
That was weird.
This goes on for another 2 minutes, and it's awesome.
Wow, that actually was pretty awesome, to tell you the truth. But yep. So as you can tell, today's episode is probably just full of swearing.
This is this. If we were monetized, we would have had the yellow $sign from the get-go.
Yeah. Let's just be honest. Yeah.
There's a point to all this.
Yeah. We've just really started the song by doing or started the show by doing a lot of swearing. But yes, today's episode is actually all about censorship, specifically American censorship. We could go into censorship with other countries, and we will briefly touch on that, but it's mostly about American censorship and honestly how it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's you would think it would be just kind of like an all or nothing kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, so I can, and this can all, be on the same network where, all right, I can watch a guy get shot, but if if I see a body part, then shut the whole thing down.
So yeah, we'll go into a little deeper into that, but first, kind of let's talk about what exactly is censorship. And actually, I pulled up this article. I know I shared this with you, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what are our common American censorship laws? But the fact that there's common laws means that why does not everyone have to follow all this? But it's a little weird. But really,
for the kids.
Yeah, true.
That's basically what it boils down to.
Think of the children. It's like, no,
right?
I don't have kids. I don't have to think of the children. Isn't that your job?
Yeah, and that's a whole other thing of parents be parents. Don't just let your kid watch whatever. Don't let your kid watch whatever just because it's animated.
Mm.
Don't let them just play whatever because it's a video game.
Yep. And I got some stories on that. But yeah, now Family Guy actually did a really good job about, talking at the very end of one of their episodes about, maybe you should watch what your parents, or maybe you should keep tab of what your children are watching instead of blaming the shows themselves. Because Family Guy gets hit with
right, and that followed probably one of the greatest musical numbers in that show.
Yeah, the freaking FCC.
That was at the freaking FCC.
But really, when it comes to American censorship, we want to know what this is. Well, I got this off of hg.org, which is a legal article. And as it's saying here, with the general idea in mind, what are some common ways that America limits one's right to free speech? Which we're going to talk more about the actual free speech,
Your free speech.
the free speech. Yes, we're going to talk more about the free speech act part of this. Maybe later in the show, but probably next week.
Yeah,
Generally,
there's a lot to unpack here, so this might take multiple episodes to get it all out.
Definitely. But, the term censorship, when applied in American laws, refers to the government's act of altering media speech or performances. This is generally based on the presumptions that such materials are or will be offensive, dangerous to the public. Now, how and why censorship occurs can vary widely and can often lead to legal challenges, as we will be discussing later in the show. Now, really, it's what is typically censored, and I'm just kind of going to read this. Displaying excessive or graphic violence, which doesn't make sense because we have excessive and graphic violence on our TVs all the time. Containing matters of containing matters of a mature nature, depicting persons in various states of undress, or materials intended to elicit, I'm not sure how to say that, prurient reactions from viewing, and containing matters which must be kept for national security and public safety. Now, that last one I can very much see, but, don't tell everybody where we're hiding everything, but...
Right, yeah, it's not wise to reveal your location.
Yeah. Like radio stations may do radio edits of songs containing words considered to be offensive, or the television may either delete scenes, bleep offensive words, or use bars blurring obscure images or words believed to be inappropriate. But really, what is deemed to be inappropriate? Who deems that to be inappropriate?
Honestly, that's subjective. To my understanding, it's subjective. And on a global level, on even a local level, if you're to say, what's inappropriate to you is not inappropriate to me, for better or for worse.
And that's really what a lot of this is. It's just like, oh, what look at what they get away with on like South Park or Family Guy, even, especially Family Guy, because Family Guy is actually on Fox, which is a national broadcast. And Fox is and South Park is basic cable, where they can probably get away with a little bit more.
Yeah, and just according to the FCC guidelines, it also depends on what time of day this airs. Basically, anything that's overnight, like 10 a.m. like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. is basically like no holds barred. But
yet they still bar holes,
Yeah, and again, it comes down to the public consensus of, is this too inappropriate? Is this just outright obscene? Is it porn?
But what never made sense to me is, like, during the daytime, those daytime talk shows that I don't know if they still have on, but that they used to, like the Maury Povich show and Jerry Springer.
And obviously not. Well, I think Springer is still in syndication.
Right. He passed away, but yeah, I think his show was in syndication. What never made sense to me was, it seemed like the people that were watching that were the people that, would want to see the uncensored version of it. Like, you remember they actually used to have like the DVDs for the Jerry Springer show, and you could actually buy them completely uncensored, but you had to pay more for it. Yeah. But it seemed like, the people like the main audience, there were people that just flipped the channel, but the main audience that was watching it every day would have been like, oh yeah, let's watch this. I want to hear what they're saying, because a lot of times they would even censor words that didn't need to be censored.
Yeah. And sorry, go on.
But no, I was just thinking, like, I remember one day, because I spent a lot of time out of school because I had a lot of medical issues as a kid. And one of the times that I was at home, Maury Povich came on, and I never understood why they did this, because they actually censored like what even Maury was saying, and he wasn't swearing. He was saying like even they were doing like an episode of robberies or something like that, and he was like, and this is what they call a smash and grab robbery, and it went like, and this is what they call a beep robbery.
Okay.
And I was like, why are you censoring smash and grab?
Yeah, that's a little perplexing. Like, I can understand like swearing like non-profanity if it's like a location. Like, I can't remember if they did this on like Cops or not, but like I've seen it on some Discovery shows where if they're like on the phone and they're giving a location, they'll bleep out the location, because some people are nuts and they'll go to a place because they heard it on TV. So I can understand that.
Right. Well, that I can understand. I was actually, and this is a little off topic, but my wife used to watch, I think she still does. She watched this show called Good Bones that's on HGTV. It's basically one of those fixer-upper kind of shows. It's like a mom and daughter family kind of thing where they go and buy houses and fix them up. Well, they own a house. We were in Indianapolis, and they own a business, or at least the daughter does. And while we were there, it's pretty well known because on the show they promote that business all the time, or a lot of times when they're doing like blueprints of how they're going to fix it up, they're at the business, and many times they get the materials and stuff from the people who deliver for the business as well. So we were there, and one of the first things that they have there is a big note that says, "Do not ask us where the houses are that we have worked on the show, because those houses now belong to people we've sold them to." And it's like, yeah, because everybody would then want to know what the houses were, and then run out there, and now essentially you're just trespassing on somebody's private lawn.
Right. And then it's like, if somebody is being portrayed as a jerk on the show and they give excuse me, give a location, you don't want to reveal that location, because then everybody, people watching, they're gonna, they're worried that people are gonna go and harass this person after everything has been said and done.
And knowing America, they probably would, or at least somebody would.
Yeah. But as far as, and that's just like public protection, that's reality kind of stuff. Art, I've never felt that art should be censored.
I can see things being censored for safety, but art?
Yeah, art is a whole other thing where it's like, you know what? Just no. Like, obviously, the core idea, don't fuck with kids, don't indoctrinate them. But again, that's a whole conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like art is art, and I don't see that. It makes no sense. My brain words are hard today. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I didn't want to wake up this morning, to be honest. So I was just like, oh fuck. I mean, I should say
it's a little early in the day to talk about Gothic architecture.
That's very true. Now, actually, while researching the show, I actually came across the consumer guide here, which gives a little bit more of a breakdown of what is going to be censored when it comes to American censorship. Here, I've got it pulled up here. Now, obscene, indecent, profane broadcasts. Again, it just seems like the stations are just picking and choosing. There's like a blanket of just like about 7 words. Actually more like 68 words, which we'll go into in a little bit here, of what you can't do. But even then, a lot of times they do still get away with it. But like obscene, indecent, or profane broadcasts, but who's deciding it? This is deciding what's obscene, indecent, or profane. Obscene content does not have protection under the First Amendment, which again we'll talk more about First Amendments later. for content to be ruled obscene, it must meet three-pronged test established by the Supreme Court. It must appeal to an average person's prudent interest, depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way, and be taken as a whole or lack serious literary, artistic, political, scientific value. So I don't know. Now, indecent content portrays a sexual or excretory organs, or activate in a way that is patently offensive, but does not meet the three-pronged test of obscenity. And then it also says obscene content includes grossly offensive language, which is considered a public nuance. Because, yeah, saying fuck is a public nuance, apparently.
So, in other words, you can't animate a naked dude whose dick turns into a gun, mows down the internet, or mows down the innocent, and goes, suck a dick, dumb shits.
Well, you can, but then they'll blur it out.
Then it won't air on public television.
Like, I remember there's been a lot of cartoons that have, like, tried to do a lot of things like that, and then they've censored it. But in a lot of ways, sometimes the censorship makes it funnier.
Sometimes, yeah. And sometimes, it's done in just such a way where it flies under the radar. There's a scene from Rocko's Modern Life that I'm thinking of right now, where Rocko's, he got fired from the comic book store, so he's, basically going through all these other jobs, and then you just cut to him, in a call center. And I can't remember what the background says, but it's like be something, be confident, be something else.
It's like be hot, be naughty, be confident, or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
what it was. And then and then just going, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, and Mrs. Big Head's on the other end of the line.
Rocko,
Mrs. Big Head. Yeah, I mean, kids wouldn't understand what that is.
Hey, I didn't at the time of the airing of that. I'm old enough to remember when that was a new episode, but I remember when that happened, and I wasn't laughing because I was just kind of like, I was enjoying the cartoon. Right. But yeah. I remember my mom started laughing, and I was not understanding why she thought it was so funny. But now I understand why she thought it was so funny.
Which is why those shows work.
Mm-hmm. But that was the thing, is like a lot of the cartoons that we grew up with, many of them before, I would say, Fox, not Fox Animation domination, but before Fox really got in there, a lot of them seemed to talk down to kids.
Yeah, they were.
Like we were talking about before the show. Right.
And you can, like, in the 80s, they were basically just extensive toy ads.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, like Nickelodeon, that was kind of the, like, they were kind of like getting their legs, and they got all these different creators that would not talk down to kids. But then it's like a whole slew of other things where, and it's just become more prevalent today, where it's just like, oh yeah, they're just dumb kids, and all random, and there's no real substance to it. It's just flash, and there it's gone.
Yeah, I would say Nickelodeon is the first one that really started talking. I don't know, maybe it's arguably the first ones that really started not treating kids like they were stupid.
Right.
Because I remember there's actually, if you go on Hulu, there's a documentary of Nickelodeon called The Orange Years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they said at the very beginning was that they didn't want to be Disney. In fact, they wanted to be the anti-Disney, because Disney had this thing where, they would show conflict, but it was like in a cutesy kind of way. And, everybody, he's being naughty, and, this is what happens when you're naughty. It's like, but Nickelodeon wanted to show that, sometimes there were good kids or good characters, that sometimes did bad things, but that didn't necessarily make them bad people,
And then you have shows like Ren and Stimpy, where, you'd see Stimpy's face get slapped all the way around his skull.
Mm-hmm. Stimpy's face would get slapped around his skull. How many times did Ren and Stimpy just beat the living crap out of each other? But yeah, and Ren and Stimpy was one that very much pushed the envelope of what was allowed on television. In fact, one of the things they said in that show was, or in that documentary, was they did Ren and Stimpy, and Viacom owned both Nickelodeon and MTV. And apparently, when Ren and Stimpy gained popularity, they ran to Viacom. MTV ran to Viacom and said, "Why did you put that show on Nickelodeon and not on MTV? Because that's more of a show for teenagers, and that's our demographic." But then Nickelodeon, like Viacom and Nickelodeon and MTV had a big fight saying, like, we're both going after the teenagers, but I know you guys are strictly teenagers. We are kids and teens.
Right.
And then that's when they decided that because Viacom owned both stations, they would air it on Nickelodeon first, and then it would be on MTV like the following day.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that we're kind of going more into the show's aspect, which we'll get there in a little bit later into the episode here. Hey, I see we got a guy talking to us. Hey, Skinny Savior, what's up? I don't know if you can see that. I like how your name too is a swear word. Being
hey, it's different every other week. Why not?
We need more consistency. No, we don't. No, we don't.
Consistently inconsistent.
Exactly. Now, how does the law handle censorship? It doesn't seem like the law actually handles it, but basically they have a blanket of words that you cannot say, and then if you say those, it's more like the FCC doesn't arrest them.
No, I think they fine them.
Yeah. But I don't know how, I could not find how big the fine is. I think it depends on like the severity of the law break, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I was looking to see if there was one flat thing. Because I remember there was okay, so let's start with the big guy. Howard Stern.
Mm-hmm.
He had to move to XM radio partially because the radio station that he was on kept getting fined because of him.
Yeah. Look at him now. Now he's toothless.
Yeah. But now he's got two XM radio stations on XM radio, and they're some of the most popular that are on XM.
That's why I've always wanted, it was like, it had been a goal, like a dream of mine for a while, just to kind of just be able to just broadcast my own shit. But obviously there's FCC in the way.
You could always, if you had like a short range receiver, you could always do your own FM radio station. I'm wondering if there's a way to do your own XM.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Because I like to play music. I like to share my music, but the internet doesn't like me sharing music.
There we go.
Copyright.
Yeah, that was the thing too. When I had this as a radio show, Facebook would get upset and start blocking me. They wouldn't take down my channel, but they would.
No, but again, they make sure you wouldn't get paid.
Well, it wasn't even that I was getting paid for it, but they would actually start saying, they would actually shut off my live broadcast, saying, "Oh, you're playing Adam Sandler's The Hanukkah Song. It's like it's near Christmas, and I'm in a radio station."
Right.
How is this? And most of the times I would fight it and win, but I'm like, yeah, but now a lot of people miss that, because of you guys screwing this up. Yeah, and like I said, we'll get into like everything with the cartoons a little bit later here. I'm pretty sure if we were monetized, this next part is going to demonetize us.
Oh, as if the first 7 seconds of the show didn't.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Skinny Savior. I don't know if you saw the first 7 seconds of the show, but it was just like it was like actually maybe.
Hold on, I'll recreate it for you. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits.
And then we played the Blink-182 cursing song, which was that exact words.
Yep.
But yeah, so this next part here, there are actually certain words that apparently you're not allowed to use.
Nice.
Should we say them? I want to say every single one.
Should we say the other 61 that are listed here?
Well, here's the thing, though. I'm looking at some of these, and I'm like, I've actually seen these on TV. I've seen these on Family Guy, and so here's where I think it's just it seems like the stations just pick and choose,
Yeah, I'm not gonna read all these off, but yeah, there's like you've definitely heard some of these on primetime.
Now, what I want to know, we were talking about television shows. How does South Park get away with more of these things than a lot of your other ones? Like, remember, they actually had a whole episode called "It Hits the Fan," where they said shit like over 200 times. And I'm like, but they weren't ever allowed to say shit before. I mean, they had been little times here and there where they had been allowed to. But where is this line here? And I was looking for this. Where is this line where it says, okay, it's okay to say it here, but it's not okay to say it here? And then they had a great way where they were trying to explain it when they were like, oh, you can say it in the figurative aspect, but not the literal aspect. And then they were like, I mean, of course, South Park, they very much laid that out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they had to have like made some sort of agreement with the FCC or at least with Comedy Central, to where it's like, all right, this is like a special instance. This is back the day where they like really clamped down on like curse words and such. And so yeah, they must have worked out some sort of special agreement. It's like, okay, just for this one episode, we will uncensor the word shit, and you can have at it.
Yeah, and boy, did they ever have at it. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, it seriously got old, but even they referenced in the show how old it was getting because they were saying it so much. My favorite, though, was when they were explaining
curse words like microb.
Yeah, but my favorite part of that episode, though, was where they were where Miss Chokes on Dick, which was her actual name on there. She was trying to explain to the kids how sometimes it's okay to say shit and sometimes it's not. And she's like, the figurative aspect is okay, but the literal aspect is not. She's like, for example, the weather outside is shitty. That is okay. But if I say the weather outside is shit, that is naughty. It's like,
or it's like even going past shit. It's like how some words some people have passed the scene where Garrison is talking about how it's okay for him to say fag because he's gay, but if anyone else who isn't gay says fag, that's when you hear the bleep.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, then Jimbo, he's like the only other one that doesn't get bleeped, and they're like, "Oh, we all learned something about Jimbo today." That's back when jokes like that were totally fine. Now everyone seems to get all uppity, and it's like that was obviously a joke. It was not being offensive towards anyone,
Right. God, look at Mel Brooks though. There's so much shit he got away with.
Mel Brooks. Oh, you'd never get away with a Mel Brooks movie now.
Not these days. They could barely get away with it then.
Well, even back then, yeah. What was that? There was one that he did with Gene Wilder, and I can't think of the name of it, but they were in they were out with like a group of people, and they were in I think out in the desert or the woods or whatever, and they were eating beans.
Oh,
and then they started farting around. Yeah, Blazing Saddles. Yeah, they started farting around the fire.
Okay, that's a bit of censorship that makes no fucking sense to me.
Yeah.
Because like you take out the farts in that scene, the scene's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's another one. There was a John Hughes movie. I can't remember which one exactly. I think it might be. I think it was 16 Candles. Where I'm blanking on names again. It's morning and the coffee's not kicking in. But like the kid, they're at the dance and the kid's like busting a move. In the unedited cut, like he goes down and then you hear a fart. But when they play it on TV, they keep the scene in, kid goes down, but they take out the fart. And it's like, you just killed the joke, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like a lot of fart jokes and stuff hadn't been in movies. They had, but it was usually like when somebody would move like that, and then you'd hear a horn sound or something like that. And then they'd go, which was not an actual fart, but it was like supposed to simulate. But I think that was the first movie where they were actually using like a realistic sounding fart sound.
Oh, and back to Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why
And
it was so controversial to its time, because I mean they were
Yeah.
sitting there for like what 2 minutes with
Yeah, so,
everyone doing that.
yeah, that was like one of the tamer jokes too. Like they freely use the N-word through that. But the point was, it wasn't just, for the sake of being offensive. It was that, Bart, the black sheriff, he's the smartest character in the whole movie.
Mhm.
And it's, just a bunch, and it's the words being thrown around mainly by a bunch of ignorant village people.
I had this show, this Gamers Got a Game, the podcast. I had this show as a radio show, and I had to follow FCC regulations. And I actually went to the one of the producers one day because that was back when I could play music on the show. Here we can't do it quite as much, but
seriously, we need to set up like a Patreon or something where we can have just like videos where we can just have like listening parties, man.
Exactly. Let's do it. I'm serious. Let's do it.
Okay, yeah.
But what I was saying though was there was a song that was a very inspirational song. It's by an R&B rap artist named T-Ferg. He's not super mainstream, but he is pretty good. He's pretty well known. And it was called Keep Pushing. Well, the problem was that in the song, the other guy that he sings with, he uses the N-word twice, but he's not using it in a derogatory form, and it's not meant to just be there and be completely offensive. It actually kind of pushes it through. But they told me even though it was not being used derogatorily, because the word itself was being used, I couldn't play that song. And I got so pissed.
Somebody might get offended. Oh my God.
And I even sat there and I argued with him, but the whole thing was they were like, my show, that was back when it was on Wednesday nights and it was at 7 p.m. And they were like, so it's a time when you got more families listening. And I'm like, I don't think they're really going to care. I mean, they hear me on here and I use mild cursing all the time because I did push that envelope as much as I could.
It's like, yeah, it's like if they're listening to me as I am already, they're kind of in for the ride. There's no surprises here.
Mm-hmm. And there was the only time that I ever kind of pushed it a little bit was I played Adam Sandler's Ode to My Car. But that's another one where the censorship actually made it funnier.
There's oh my God. There's a song by, I don't know if you're familiar with Voltaire.
I've heard the name.
He most famously did the Brains song from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, he has a song called The Dirtiest Song That Ain't. And he uses self-censorship in a way that's really funny. Where it's basically like, in the chorus is, help me go on the radio by singing the songs I can't.
That actually sounds
look it up sometime when you get the chance.
Yeah. But kind of going back here though, there are actually certain words that you're not allowed to use. But now I'm looking at some of these, as we were saying here. I've seen asshole show up. That's been, but it seems like on a lot of your what do you call that? Like your local stations, they won't say that, but I see this a lot on your basic cable.
There's one word on here that I'm surprised didn't make the list here, and they could have made it 69. But yeah, I look through here and it's like, all right, so granted, it's fallen out of essentially the public vernacular, but like, I'm surprised the word retard isn't on here. Like, people are so like,
I think you can say that though.
You can say that, but yeah, like, how people are like so sensitive about it these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't make this list.
So yeah, but I've seen it on there, and I think a lot of times, because most of the time when people do that now, when people say retard, they're actually, it's being done by somebody being portrayed as a bully on there, and there's usually somebody there to or another character there to stop them, or it pushes some sort of story forward. But saying bust a nut like there is on number 6, that doesn't usually push the story forward.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Then.
That's just being lewd to be lewd. But I've seen Bust a Nut on there before too, you know. Like I've seen almost all of these here, at least in some way. But South Park is another one that they will find ways to get that on the air. The whole thing is like their movie was actually an uncircumcised penis joke, bigger, longer, and uncut.
Yep.
And that was because they were censored because they couldn't say South Park, all hell breaks loose. But that didn't make sense because they were like, oh, you can't say hell in the title. But it was like, what about the movie Hellraiser? Right. What about Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell? And there was actually no depiction of hell in the movie.
It could be like, especially with like, you know, like Jason Goes to Hell, it could be, you know, hell in the biblical sense, hell in the like the location.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like all hell breaks loose, that's kind of like a different,
but that was
a different definition.
But they were going for the literal aspect of that because hell did come to
Part
Earth.
of it takes place in hell.
Mm-hmm. And it broke loose on Earth after, you know, so I mean, it actually was, you couldn't get much more literal than that. But from what I understand, of course, this has changed a little bit since then. They were actually told that they couldn't have 300 swear words in there. If they hit the 300 mark for swearing, then they would automatically get an NC-17 rating. Mm-hmm. So Trey Parker and Matt Stone made sure there was 299 swear words.
I think the first Clerks, they ran into a similar issue where it's like the the board or whoever, you know, the powers that be, they wanted to make that an NC-17 movie solely on just the amount of cursing that was in the movie.
Well, it wasn't the amount of cursing. It was actually because of the scene where they're talking about porn actors. And they go like, oh, the jizz mopper, the one that goes.
Oh, yeah, there's that scene too.
Yeah, they were saying because of that and because of the scene where Randall is sitting there and they got that mom with the little kid that comes in and he's ordering all those porn movies.
Yeah, there's that. Also, there's also the going back to the scene with the jizz mopper. You kind of, you know, you see one of the pages on Randall's magazine.
Mm-hmm. So it was that along with all the swearing. But actually, Kevin Smith is, I want to say he might be one of the only directors that has fought the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America. He's fought them on their rating and flipped his rating 3 times. He said it's almost an impossible feat, and he's done it 3 times. They did it with Clerks was the first one. Then with Jersey Girl, he initially got an R rating. That's that movie that with Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Lopez was in it at the beginning. They gave that an R rating, and he got it flipped to a PG-13. And then, and he literally said, "I only put the F word in there 1 time to push the PG-13 rating. The rest of it, there was nothing wrong with it. And if you watch the movie, I can't understand why they were trying to give it an R rating."
Yeah.
And then the other one was, and this one I am not surprised at all, but it was called Zack and Miri Make a Porno. It was with Elizabeth Banks and Seth Rogen. Yeah, that was another one that they wanted to give it an NC-17 rating. And specifically, did you ever see the movie? Yeah, specifically because of that scene where they're filming the porno and the guy that plays Randall is underneath, kind of like filming the shots. And I don't know how much of this I can get away with, but basically there's stuff they're doing with the girls' back. Yeah, and then all the stuff comes down on him. Yeah. They didn't want the FCC was not cool with that scene, but he actually had to go and fight for that scene.
It's a movie that taught me the concept of Dutch rudder.
Yes, that movie taught us a lot of things. Hey, Junior, I see Junior's watching us, and he was saying that it's because movies like Dogma and South Park have changed, have changed TV standards. And you got to think he's right. There's always going to be one thing that kind of starts the change. There's some cataclysm.
Some sort of cataclysm, and then 20, 30 years later, you wonder what the fuss was about.
Mm-hmm. I still wonder what the fuss was about on a lot of these things.
Right, and we're just talking about TVs and movies here. Like, I don't even know if we've touched gaming at all.
Now we'll get
Maybe
into
more live.
gaming here. Yeah, we've been doing this show about a half hour, and yeah. But I'm looking at some of these things like what I don't even know what some of these curse words are. Like I see number 35. I don't even know what heeb is. I don't know if
I
I've
think it's a
ever heard
racial
that
slur. I
before.
just forget against who.
Yeah, and you can't say Christ or Jesus Christ. I've seen them do that though.
Yeah. Well, that's biblical. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain.
So if you want to see all the list of this is just the words.
Fudge packer.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. That's how South Park got away with that because Tom Cruise was packing fudge.
Yeah, they just made it literal.
You were working in a candy store. You were packing fudge. So you are a fudge packer. It's like, I'm not a fudge packer. Just freaking out about it.
I'm looking at number 50 and I'm thinking of a comment I had made. Someone I was following on Twitter is like, what if I just, started an OnlyFans and just posted pictures of my cat? And I was, my comment was that you'd be showing off more pussy than most models are willing to on there.
Yeah, I like that. But now, here's the thing: is like Worldwide Women. This was actually from Worldwide Women. It was saying the censorship on effects on society. Do you have that pulled up here?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Yeah, so the censorship effects on society. I'm not going to read this whole thing, obviously, but censorship is something that takes place in every country. Now, again, I can see, the whole way that censorship started was that it was supposed to be, what the world leaders did, like what they were censoring their documents so that other nations couldn't see, their nation's secrets. I can see that. That's really where it started, and then all of a sudden it became, what is lewd, offensive, and everything else. And it also seems like these things like Fox and all these stations, they don't actually censor it because they just want to, but it seems like there's this there's that list of 65 words, and then there's phrases that you can't use, and then they kind of go from there about oh well, this show is aimed at this audience. That's why Family Guy gets away with so much, because it's aimed at that audience that's going to want the envelope pushed. But when you go to something like that 70s show, that's something like that's more it's on Fox, but it was more family oriented.
Yeah. Sorry, there's someone screaming outside my window.
They're yelling, censorship is wrong.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. That's the thing. We're doing these from our respective homes. Sometimes things happen that are not in our.
I've got a neighbor who I can use some of these 68 words to describe. But yeah, it's different for. Again, apologies. My brain is like not. Yeah, or as like Junior's it talks about time slots too, and I'd mentioned it earlier in the show where it is like the FCC guideline where you have to be more prudent. It's actually could be 8 nowadays. Reading the FCC guidelines, it's definitely after 10 p.m. Is considered adult viewing, like between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And so, yeah, I could see that where if it's like right after the news, which, it's like right after the news, like that's when you hit prime time. That's when families are watching. So you might not want to get too hard hitting with the adult content, but like figure, they're assuming most kids go to bed by 10. And so that, that's the adults' time to watch.
Right. But I mean,
like,
but look at some
example.
of the shows that are on before 10, or at least were when we were growing up. I mean, are you saying things like, and I'm going to pick on NBC here, but like Friends and Will and Grace and ER and things like that, those were not always a kid friendly.
Right.
So it seemed like, and a lot of times, even today, there's not a whole lot of people watching TV. Most people have gone to streaming services. But the ones that are still on TV today, like, you get Family Guy, they're on before 10 o'clock, and I can see The Simpsons is more family viewing than Family Guy is.
These days, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, not that The Simpsons hasn't had its share of controversies or pushed the envelope in certain areas, but I mean, Family Guy really basically takes what The Simpsons did and says, yeah, we're going to go like 40 times further, I mean, how many rape jokes, incest jokes have they gotten away with? Like, and suicide jokes. And I'm like, there's sometimes I've actually even sat there and been like, okay, I'm pretty much against censorship, but kind of surprised they did that,
Yeah, right. You wonder.
But why did this get censored, but this didn't,
But yeah, why did this? Why can we say it on this show at 7:30, but we have to wait until 11:30 for another show to say it?
And like Family Guy, they actually literally told you how to kill yourself one day. I don't know if you saw that episode.
I stopped.
It was done as a passing joke too, and that's why I was kind of surprised. But like Peter was upset that he didn't have that Quagmire and Joe and Cleveland were not wanting to hang around him at a certain point, and he just walks out and he goes, Lois, if I were to want to commit suicide, and he actually has the knife in his hand, and he puts his hand out like this, his hands out, and he's like, would I cut my wrist this way or this way? And then you hear Meg yell out like, sideways for attention, long ways for results. And then Lois just sits there and goes, Meg is right. And then she's like, okay, well, I'll be in the garage. And then they stop and then they move the show on. It's like, Peter, put that down. He's like, well, I don't have any friends. And I'm like, they seriously just gave you like step-by-step instructions.
Yeah, and I think depending on the network, I think there's certain there's certain agreements that can be made. And it could be that there wasn't enough of like a public outcry to censor or edit these kind of things. Like there has to be enough. I feel like there's like just kind of like some like basic things like you obviously wouldn't want to do on a TV show if you want it to succeed. But at the same time, there's also like some public opinion, to my understanding of how these guidelines work, where there's some public opinion where it's like, if again, like that joke he just described, if too many people were like, no, that's way too much. That's way too, inappropriate. Look back at like 9/11, look back right after that happened, how much stuff had to be edited because it reminded people too much of that. So it really depends on kind of like the climate at the time.
True. And Junior was just saying here that he thinks a lot of these things slip past them and get banned later too. And that's true because I've seen that where they'll air an episode, or sometimes it's a full episode, sometimes it's a joke, and they'll cut it out later.
Right, and some things like it might just not occur to them. My favorite example of this is it's Funimation's localization of Dragon Ball Super. There's a Future Trunks arc where like the villain in the future is someone who took over Goku's body and is called Goku Black. So Trunks goes back to the past, gets good Goku, brings him back to the dystopian future, and like all the soldiers see good Goku and they're ready to train on him, and you just hear Trunks go, hold your fire, that man isn't black.
So it was
this aired. Granted it was on Adult Swim, or was it Adult Swim?
So that was a race-related joke that really wasn't supposed to be race-related, but they did like South Park where they pushed it.
It was an innocent enough mistake, but you like listen to it out of context and you're wondering what the hell happened.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing too. Like Seth MacFarlane was one of the few. He seems to be one of the few animators that can get away with 9/11 jokes, and I think that's because he was actually famously supposed to be on the first plane that went into one of the towers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the story was that he, this is back when Family Guy was in its infancy. The first like 2 or 3 seasons, and he was in New York, or I forget, but he was I think he was in New York, And him and one of the executive producers, they went out drinking on September 10th, and they got super wasted, and they ended up missing their flight to go back home the next day. And that ended up being I want to say it was the first plane that went into the trade towers.
Okay.
He was supposed to be on there, and it's always been he's always kind of made jokes going like, yeah, alcohol saved my life, but it seems like, because that's so well known, that's why Family Guy gets away with so many 9/11 jokes.
Yeah.
And then the reason I bring that up is because it seems like whenever somebody else tries to do it, everyone panics or everyone backs off and 20 years later, but it's still too soon. But whenever he does it, everyone just kind of laughs it off.
Yeah.
But Fox never has any issues with his 9/11 jokes, and that's, again, I'm wondering if that's because he went through it,
Right, and then and basically, Seth missed his plane. But yeah, then you get into topics like school shootings, which in America happens far more often than anybody wants to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still jokes about it. Where I think for an example, like with BoJack Horseman, the reason why it didn't get flack really, because one, it was on a streaming service. Streaming services can get away with a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was more because it was a social commentary where it was just happening so often. And if you watched that episode of the show that addressed it, it's like, oh yeah, there's another school shooting, and it's all right. Thoughts and prayers. Moving on.
Oh yeah, that was like with South Park had an episode like that too. Remember, they were there was an episode where a school shooting was happening and they were not even breaking classroom. They were just going through.
Yeah, again, it's just it's all right, thoughts and prayers. Okay, turn to page 36.
Yep, but then well, if you remember, Mr. Mackey went out there and he was get the fuck down. He was, helping the children. But then at the very end, or not at the very end of that scene, you see the kids coming out of school. They're just talking like it's normal, and there's police all over the place. Yeah. And then you see Stan's mom come up and going oh my god, and they're like, oh, what's up her ass? And then later, the next scene, it's actually at Stan's family's house, and they're like, why don't you tell your dad what happened at school today? And he was like, oh, I flunked a math quiz. It's like that's the best thing that he's gotten. They're like, wait, didn't you study? And they're like, no, Stanley, I'm talking the other thing. Is like, oh yeah, some guy shot up the school today. And then they just go back and he's like, oh, well, and his dad, Randy goes like, oh, well, did you get hurt? And he's like, no. It's like, oh. And then they just go back to eating like it was nothing. And then the whole episode is actually just her freaking out and everybody wondering why she's freaking out. But then there's all kinds of shootings happening around her.
Right. So then so is it just the gravitas of these situations where, the 9/11 happened, and so we can't do anything remotely related to the thought of anything that could happen like that, versus the school shootings where it's it's just saying it's oh yeah, it rained today.
Mm-hmm. It's just weird how these censor laws just jump in and decide, oh, here it's okay, but there it's not.
Right. So back to those examples, is it just the severity of the situation where one was dedicated national tragedy, where this is more, where the other one is more of this could be an epidemic?
Yeah. Well, there's one thing we should talk about here. There are some times that censorship actually works and actually makes things funnier and makes things better. Yes. There is a song I want to play here that this works for. I'm not going to play the whole song, but I want to play this here.
Here we go. No. Piece of shit car.
Mhm.
I got a piece of car. Can't buy love. I never be very fine.
Tell me the car songs.
Car's a big piece of
The car honks don't make
Cause
this
these
funny.
shots are being shot. Well, my seatbelt's getting broken. I got to tie it in a knot. It's a piece of shit. I can't see through the windshield, cause he's got a big fucking crack. And the interior smells real bad, cause my friend puked in the back. It's a piece of shit. Piece of shit. Piece of shit.
Yeah, sometimes it works.
He sucks royalty. The key policy. 100% right. Oh, you car.
Okay,
It's kind of make me think of like some older episodes of Deadliest Catch where like they would try to get a little creative with the bleeping, and so instead of just using the bleep whenever someone would swear, they would just like use ship noises.
Yeah. But that was the thing, is like there's actually an uncensored version of this song too that is very funny, but I honestly think that the car sounds, because it's about a car, make that funnier. So I mean, in some ways, but the only reason that this exists, that this version of it exists, is because of unnecessary censorship in other areas.
Yeah.
Now,
Junior came back in. You were talking about the Goku thing, but one thing I think you missed is older Japanese people are still prejudiced towards foreign peoples more often than not older generations. Okay, yeah, that's fine in Japan, but you would think for an American localization, they would just tweak the language a little bit where it doesn't sound like the future soldiers are trying to gun down black people.
Right. Yeah, because that's voiceover for an American audience by American actors. Yeah, he says it's a Japanese company though, which
Understandable, but still,
is true.
like localization isn't like a one-to-one translation. Like there's tons of things that get tweaked. That's why there's a whole sub versus dub argument for anime in general. Is like when they do like an English dub, not only are they translating the language, but they're also translating some of the colloquialisms. And so, because there's just some jokes in Japanese that that don't make sense in English.
And yeah, he's saying here that it's like a racist doesn't always see the racism. I can see that. I see your point, Junior.
But yeah, it's just like for a society here now that's so sensitive with that, you'd think they would have caught that and changed it. Like
And yeah, he's saying he's not saying it's right or wrong, but that the racist people, like, they don't always see that it's racist. They just live that life.
I guess it's a I guess it all depends who was running Funimation that day.
It's what it seems like a lot with a lot of this stuff. Now, where we were talking about in ways that censorship has helped people, or not necessarily help people, but maybe help projects along the way. I think, can you pull this one up?
Which one?
The Batman story. If not, I got it.
Yeah, imagine if Batman was like this.
Yeah. Oh, that looks weird and bad.
I kind of like it.
I like it.
It's weird, but I like
it. That's the way a lot of things are in my life. Like, it's weird, but I like it. But yeah, Fox censorship meant that there were 9 things that Batman the Animated Series couldn't do, and in some cases, I think that meant that they had to get way more creative with a lot of their stuff, and that actually made it better. Now, with Batman, the thing to remember, and the article doesn't actually mention this a whole lot, but the thing to remember about the Batman the Animated Series, that was actually designed to be an adult cartoon. It was when they were pitching that show, I think they had the pilot and everything. They actually intended it to be aired like right after The Simpsons.
Yep.
And it was Fox, if I remember right, that said no superhero. We don't want a superhero cartoon for adults. But they liked the idea of the show, and they said give it some tweaks, and we'll put it on Fox, the animation for the kids, and the kids programming that was on at the time. So I guess Paul Dini and a lot of them were not happy about that, but then they had a meeting with each other and they said, we don't have to change jack crap really about the fundamental what is going to make this show this show. It was they couldn't kill anybody, which I guess they did actually get away with a few times, but they couldn't actually show murders on there. And then like when Joker was using those laughing gas things that would put those smiles on people's faces, they would say he's in shock, but essentially, if you remember, they had those big smiles on their faces and they were like holding the body and they were like, that's a dead person,
Yeah.
That's you saying alive, or that they are alive, but they're not.
Yeah, guidelines they had to abide by. And like, not to say they never did it, again, like you had mentioned, but the example I'm thinking of, it's actually in Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. The flashback scene had an alternate ending, where talking about the killing, the original scene being that Joker's impaled with the flag, and I guess that was like too close to like murder, instead of what seems like the more gruesome death is being hit with electric water.
Yeah, and I remember that scene too. I think actually the big issue was he was impaled with it, but then he had like blood coming out of his mouth or something.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, so with Batman here, that was the big thing. But I'm not going to read the entire thing here, but there was actually 9 things that they could not do here. They could not show you how they were actually like, a lot of times they couldn't show you how they were doing things. So it was, don't try this at home. Yeah. And what the article says here is that every once in a while, an image goes viral on social media, supposedly showing real notes given to the Batman the Animated Series crew. Now, there's supposedly 9 big taboos that, including guns, drugs, breaking glass, alcohol, smoking, nudity, child endangerment, religion, and strangulation that they couldn't show.
Which is I remember all encapsulated in this drawing here.
Yes. Basically, this couldn't be shown on television.
Let's see here.
Now, it turns out that I'm sorry.
Junior came in. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had the same problem when it came to TV, as the comic books were way darker. Agreed. That's why in the cartoon they had to turn all the foot soldiers into robots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there was a movie too where they were going to make them humans and then they decided not to. Was that maybe the first movie?
No, they were human in the first movie.
Maybe it was the first movie they were deciding whether they should be robots or not. And I think they decided that was like too much of a technical issue.
It could have been. But yeah, the original comics, man, those are gruesome. They're great, but it's definitely like, there's a lot of stuff they had to change for the cartoon.
Now, as this article goes on, it says, you may say that the show had plenty of guns. Batman crashed through windows all the time. He really did. It's like, name me an episode he didn't break some sort of glass.
I do that when I play Arkham City.
Yeah, I said, why, yes, he did. And there are only lots and lots of arguments. For instance, the crew could not show Batman crashing through a plate glass window in case children tried to replicate it. But the studio allowed compromise of having Batman crash through things like brick walls. Batman will hit a guy with such force that his face will go to a brick wall. Glory told Del Go, that's fine, that's okay. You can't really replicate something like that. Oh my gosh, that's brain damage because he'll put his face through a brick wall. Even guns were prominent in the show. They just weren't realistic looking guns, but Tommy guns, joke guns, and otherwise fantastical weapons.
A lot of bombs.
There really were. There was a lot of bombs, a lot of smoke grenades, but that's why I'm saying too. It's like with it wasn't really those kind of things that I thought were not even an issue, but that I thought people would have trouble with. It was the fact that, Joker was excruciatingly violent, and a lot of times they were just saying that people were alive as opposed to being dead just to get it past children's censors or whatever,
And I think I think this goes back to the comics. I'm not a huge comic book guy, but I know I know a little something. It's like I know that's like the whole like Batman policy is like, oh, Batman doesn't kill.
Yeah.
What it really is from the stuff I've seen, Batman doesn't kill directly.
Right. He will not put the bullet in your head, but that doesn't mean he's not going to give somebody the gun that will.
Right? It doesn't mean he'll throw you in front of it.
But this is kind of what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show. This started getting. I would say Nickelodeon was the first one. Like I said, Nickelodeon was the first one that didn't talk down to kids. This was one of the first episodes that started treating kids like they were real people.
Yep.
They were giving them those super heavy moments in there. Like, the whole thing about Harvey Dent. Like he started as Bruce Wayne's friend.
Yeah.
And then even as a kid, you understood that, Batman is Bruce Wayne. Harvey Dent is Bruce Wayne's friend. Batman is now trying to ease up on his violence towards him, And that made you kind of think, like, kind of do more critical thinking as a kid too. Like, what is too much? Right. He's very much a bad guy, but
and like Mr. Freeze is another good example of there's like situations that kind of made him go towards criminal acts, but it's not like he's cuckoo insane.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically grief stricken, and he's so desperate to do anything to bring his cure his wife's terminal illness, and just things get much more nuanced in that way.
I remember there being times that I would watch this. Sometimes I'd be at my grandparents', or sometimes my mom would watch this with me. And my mom, or not my mom, but my grandpa especially, would sit there after the show and explain to me, obviously the difference, knowing that Batman was a superhero fictional character, but he would explain to me why, like, somebody like Mr. Freeze was acting the way that he was acting. And, you think about that now, you kind of hear that and you're like, wow, he was really analyzing a cartoon. And it's like, well, for a young kid's mind, and something as, that does have real world replication. Like, there are people that will go nuts and do that kind of thing. Not necessarily that exact thing, because they are keeping it in a cartoon world, but they'll do similar things. They can't let it go.
Yeah, sticking to the Batman thing, if you use the Killing Joke as Joker's origin story, that's basically what happened was, you have one really bad day and that'll break you.
Mm-hmm.
Was like the thesis that he had.
Yep, all it takes is one really bad day.
Yep.
That's his whole thing. And then but that's the thing, is he tried to give Gordon a really bad day to make him break. Doing everything that he did to Barbara, doing everything that he did to Jim, doing everything he did to the town. Try to give him, and then at the very end, Jim looked at Batman because he couldn't go in himself because he was too torn and tattered. And he literally looked at Batman and said, "This needs to be done by the book."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so no matter what, so they were trying to show that it was really just a person. That's still, I say that's still probably one of the greatest, but one of the hardest comic graphic novels to read. And when they put it on film, when they did the Killing Joke movie, once you get past the first 25 minutes, then it becomes good.
Yeah, that first 25, 30 minutes, it didn't need to be there.
They did that to get a theatrical release, though, because movies have to be like 90 minutes long.
Yeah, I suppose.
But it was like, but you could have at least made it an extenuation of the Killing Joke. It was like
they could have expanded more of pre-Joker, where it's like it could have been like more of a character study of like just the kind of like the things he was dealing with, like when his show bombed, when this happened to him, that happened to him. Instead, we get this like awkward Barbara having a crush on Batman, and then they fuck at the end.
They did the dance with no pants on the rooftop.
they loosened the utility belts.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the thing too. Is like I was talking to my wife after that, and I was like, so it was a good movie once you got past the first 20 minutes, but I was like, it seemed like that was Gotham, Sex in the City, followed by The Killing Joke. But
Sex, death, and money.
It really was. I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
Like, granted, the topics like censorship, and it's like it's not so much that like that the fact that it happened is more the fact that it had nothing to do with the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. If you'd have made like a whole thing on that, but if they could have even had it like parts of that, even the whole Barbara having a crush on Batman thing could have been like a thing maybe in the back, or maybe something that they kind of worked through, towards the end, but not like a whole, not the way they did. I think they kind of went at it wrong, but that's not the first time the two of them had actually gotten together like that. There was actually, I think it was Batman, the Brave and the Bold. I think they did that too, but they were in an alternate universe at that time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Brave and the Bold is a whole different continuity.
Yeah. So, and then as Junior was saying with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they had trouble, and like you were saying at the beginning of the show, they had trouble with being called ninja in certain areas. They had trouble being called, or with a lot of the violence. In fact, the first actress that played April O'Neil in the first movie wasn't even invited back for Secrets of the Ooze because she was complaining about the amount of violence that was in the first movie. And
you
if
never
you
read
watch
the comics, did she?
No. The comics are wow.
The comics, again, really good. The like the original like Eastman and Laird black and white ones are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they are not the best for kids.
Yeah, they're not the turtles that No. And even the one that's coming out, The Last Ronin, which has a video game coming out, which actually that story was written just about 5 years ago.
Not even, like I think it was like maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah, so but they're kind of going back to their old roots there with that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of funny. Like whenever they do their old roots for the TV shows, people freak out. It's like they kind of started as aliens in the comics.
Well, no, they were mutants, but it was influenced by like alien ooze and technology.
Yeah, wasn't it the Krangs that had created the ooze, and then he got into Earth?
So. Yeah, like it was all like, yeah, I think it was like, I think if you go far enough, like, yeah, it's like the Krangs are responsible for the ooze, but it was Baxter Stockman that was like developing all this technology and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, I mean, again, if you've read the comics, they killed off Shredder after the first book. And so then they kind of that's when they brought in like Dimension X and all these different alien species in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't hesitate to kill him either. I mean, they like chop his head off, put a grenade in his pants or something, and kick him off a roof. I mean, it's
maybe one telling of that. That's not the one I remember.
Okay, yep. And Junior was saying here, he was saying back for Batman, Bat may not be, Bat may not, but Joker and other villains do.
Joker and other villains do. Yeah, that's definitely that helped distinguish like who's the bad guy here.
Yeah, and he was saying that wasn't it a bioweapon that had to be changed to ooze? It
might have. I feel like they've rewritten the Turtles origin story so many times.
It's hard to keep track of where.
Yeah, it's like I know there's like one weapon where or there's like one version, or like again like the movie version, Secret of the Ooze. It was just some sort of like chemical lab that they had all these canisters of ooze that were kind of like a byproduct.
Yeah.
And the other one is Krang, and the other one it's like Baxter Stockman.
Yeah. And then it started also, didn't they say like the ooze that caused that also caused Daredevil's blindness?
Yeah, because the early Turtles works were greatly inspired by Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a similar way that, there was a chemical spill, that's what caused Daredevil to go blind. similar chemical spill. That's what caused the turtles in Splinter to mutate.
Right. And kind of another thing I wanted to talk about here. I know we're kind of segueing into this a little bit, but how. And then, I really do. Now, because this is called Gamers Got a Game, we should probably talk about censorship in gaming. If I can actually get this to pull up, that would be fantastic. That would be just so great. Okay, there we go. So I found this here, the weirdest and most unexpected instances of video game censorship. Now it seems like with
By Hulu.
censorship, it seems like it's more regional, at least what I was able to find. So what was it? I think in Fallout, instead of saying that it's the Japanese that were causing set off a bomb, they will say it was a nation to the north or it was a nation to the west or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll very much hint that that's what it's supposed to be. But with video game censorship, it seems like it doesn't really hit the video game industry because of the ratings board, unless it's regional. But there are certain times that certain things have been censored that just didn't make any sense.
Hi, James Gunn.
Yeah. Now here it's like, Mortal Kombat 1 fixes a franchise LGBTQ representation, but is it enough?
I think that's a different article.
I hate when these things do this.
But yeah, that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah.
If you've been following us, in previous episodes, basically like in a similar vein to this, and if we can, we'd love to bring some people on to get their perspectives as far as like representation in games and other media versus escapism.
Right. Well, there's a lot of times where they aren't really censored, but they're given the AO rating if they've got something in there. And a lot of times that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, this is back when Rockstar was actually a good developer and put out decent games pretty consistently. But they did Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and I guess they actually had a mod in there. But to get to that mod, you had to actually go looking for it,
Yeah.
And you had to actually download things to it and pull it out. And they there was that sex mini game called Hot Coffee where one of CJ's girlfriends asked him to come in, and then you can simulate sex movements and everything. Well, did that really need to get them an AO rating because it wasn't part of the actual game?
It wasn't.
You literally had to go in and find it and do things and manipulate it to get it.
I think the fact that it existed, similar to like when we were talking about with the movies, can't have more than 300 curse words, otherwise you're going to get NC-17. The fact that they're pushing these, being plot relevant or not, the fact that it exists in there and people can consume it is what they're looking at. As far as I know. Yeah.
There was a game recently, very recently, and let me see if I can pull this up. This one got hit with a lot of censorship, and even the developers, at first they were shocked, and then they said they didn't care. They were going to do what they wanted to do anyway. Let's see if I can find this here. Okay, I found it. Okay, the reveal trailer for this. Let me pull this up. And just tell me, they actually gave this an AO rating specifically for the violence, but then the developer first didn't like it and then suddenly didn't care. Where
it comes in, AO is a thing they won't let many studios have. It's M or nothing nowadays. That could be in part because AO is just kind of like a studio killer.
Yeah, well, that's because PlayStation, Sony PlayStation, Microsoft Xbox, and Nintendo will not put AO rated games on their consoles. And then on top of that, your major retailers like Best Buy, Walmart, Target, they refuse to stock AO rated games. But that's where Steam is coming in, and Steam pretty much says, "Yeah, come on, put it on here."
Yeah, for at least, like with the physical distribution, it's there's not enough money in it to really argue for it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Steam goes, yeah, you can just I think, every time I pull up the featured page, the store page, like the very first like most popular game supposedly is like some sort of hentai game.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, let me play this right here. Is that is pulled up, right? Okay. Yeah, let me play this right here. This is one that sparked a lot of debate when it first came out, saying that Grand Theft Auto seems to do a lot of this kind of thing, but in this game, we'll talk about it as soon as it's done playing here.
My name is not important. What is important is what I'm going to do. I just fucking hate this world and these human worms feasting on its carcass. My whole life is just cold, bitter hatred. And I always wanted to die violently. This is the time of vengeance, and no life is worth saving. And I will put in the grave as many as I can. It's time for me to kill. And it's time for me to die. My genocide crusade begins here.
I wasn't expecting this to be a twin stick shooter.
So that trailer, even just the trailer, sparked a lot of outrage when that was first released. A lot of people were saying, when you put something like that out, it was just being put out just for the sake of violence. And I can very much see what they're talking about if you're going to base your whole opinion on one reveal trailer. But as the trailers came out, or as more trailers came out, more information came out on that game, it became very clear that there was nothing more to that game other than just running and shooting random PCs, and then the enemies were the people who were trying to fight back against you. Like, just because you were doing that. That game eventually got an adults only rating, and nobody was willing to touch it. And then the developer was sitting there going, why is this? Why won't you do this? And their big thing was, how many people are on Grand Theft Auto 5, and then just grab Trevor and start shooting,
Mm-hmm.
Any random NPC causing all kinds of havoc. The world turns in on you. That becomes the fun that you're having. And I've done it myself on Grand Theft Auto. What's the difference between that and this? And my big thing was that the big difference was that Grand Theft Auto is more artistic, as it has an actual story to it.
It's more artistic. It's also more arcadey, where like the hatred trailer is very much, it's a completely different tone. And at least from the way it was describing that, there's like no, like, yeah, people are like struggling against you because obviously, they don't want to die. But it's more like there's no, it doesn't seem like there's any like risk of punishment for like going on that rampage, where with Grand Theft Auto, the more you start getting into that, the the star rating goes up, and then you're being chased by the cops and eventually the military. Eventually you do die.
Well, eventually you do, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like there's maybe, like you were saying, like there's more, like there's any repercussion for that.
Right.
Because again, if you die in Grand Theft Auto, I can't remember about the later games, but at least with the trilogy, with the with 3 and Vice City and San Andreas, if you die, you lose all of your weapons.
I can't remember if you lose your, like with GTA 5. I don't remember if you lose your weapons necessarily, but you do lose like a chunk of money.
Yeah. So you lost a lot, and that was the way it was with there. You lost a chunk of money and you lost all of your weapons.
Right.
With this, it doesn't seem like there's any repercussion for it. It's just, oh, you died, try again. So yep, Junior was sitting here. He said, "AO many studios won't let the M rate." Okay.
Yeah, I read that one.
Sorry, I didn't see that. He said, yeah, all 3 major video game console manufacturers, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, just like I was saying there, Steam permits them, but hides them by default. So you have to actually go in and look for them specifically.
Yeah, but it's strange though. Like, I'm not searching out these games. They just show up when it's like, yeah, here's our like most popular games this week, and it's some sort of like porn game. It's like, dude.
Yeah, but he was saying with GTA, GTA offers I'm sorry, but with GTA and others, I'm sorry, don't they have an online not rated? Yes. Yeah, well, a lot of them do, but yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing with Steam too. I'm surprised Steam's got away with a lot of their stuff. Like, didn't they have a JFK assassination simulator?
They might have at one point. Yeah, Steam's a little bit more of like the Wild West compared to, say, like Sony or Microsoft these days.
Yeah, they had that, and I thought they had like a Columbine simulator too, where like at the very end of the game, I remember seeing this. It was like at the very end of the game, you saw pictures of Columbine, like people screaming, and it was like, that is such a horrible thing.
Yeah.
There
was a game somewhat recently, I don't know if it was rated or if it even fully released, where other messaging aside, you're basically like a Wiki says the last AO game was in 2018. Agony. Interesting. Okay.
And didn't they actually water that down for an M rating for console releases?
They may have, but yeah, like I remember like not too long ago, just like there was a game where you're like this trans person or whatever, and you're just going around indiscriminately just killing straight white people.
And that's where it seems like it's just violence for violence sake. But again, bringing it into censorship, and I know we're going to talk about this more next week with free speech, but does that tread on free speech to say, oh, you can't do this? Because it seems like that's almost, there's a difference between free speech and hate speech. And it seems like that might actually be treading on hate speech. Like with hatred,
Yeah.
They were towing the line here of that. But at the same time, I could see their point of how come you can do it in Grand Theft Auto, but you're not allowed to do it here. But it's like, yeah, but the whole point of Grand Theft Auto is not to necessarily do that. That's just a fun aspect. And that's not the game. I mean, if you ever, especially the newer Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, especially, and Ballad of Gay Tony and Lost and Damned, they've got like pretty deep stories, and they're telling an artistic story. So I can kind of see where they shouldn't be censored, but should this be censored where you're just, oh, I just fucking hate the world, so I'm going to take everybody out.
Again, there's free speech. You're free to say what you want, but everyone else also has the free speech to say, hey, this sucks.
And I mean, and you think about it, how many times has hate speech, could that be construed as free speech? But how many times does it actually cause people to be hurt? It's like you can't yell
that's
fire
the whole
in a crowded theater.
Right, yeah. But yeah, the whole like free speech versus hate speech, that's a whole big issue that's going on with YouTube, and why so many people who are being accused of that are going to other platforms like Rumble, where they're not going to automatically assume that just because you have a differing opinion that is considered hate speech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen that on Twitch and on YouTube and even on Facebook and other socials where somebody says something that's not necessarily meant to be taken an offensive way,
right,
and they're automatically banned. You know, yeah, there was actually somebody that I knew that said something like it was during like the whole time. Remember, like when what was that? There was like all those Nazis that were like supporting Trump, all that kind of stuff. Well, there was somebody that I knew there that was saying, "Oh, we should, do this, do that to these Nazi-like people," and it was actually like very cartoony of what he was saying.
Yeah,
and Facebook banned him for it for like 30 days. It's like, okay, what he was talking about, and I'm not going to say it, but what he was talking about wouldn't even be physically possible. It's basically like stretching people, like and going like banjo. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cartoony violence he's talking about. That's not really a straight up threat. That's just more he's being him, Yeah. But then they decided to censor that, and it's where does it? I still want to know
where's the line?
Where is this line drawn? It just seems to be like, oh, it's drawn here because I said, but over here it's over here because I said.
Right, and we'll get into it more another episode, but just taking a just a light read through YouTube's guidelines, it's like, who's defining these terms?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the threshold for all this? Who's defining these terms? And how come nobody's allowed to know what it is so they can avoid falling into these traps?
And that's the same thing with Twitch. Twitch will literally ban you and then not tell you why.
Which, frankly, is cowardice to me. If you're going to boot me off of somewhere, you better tell me why.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and I guess that happened. They've banned like several major streamers with it. They banned Amaranth and not told her why. They've banned Dr. Disrespect, which I know he's on YouTube now. And I guess he said he did eventually find out why, and he's actually taking legal action.
Okay.
That's a whole nother story. But then I know there was a friend of mine actually that was recently banned. It was only like a 3-day ban that he got.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a daughter who's 3 years old. And he was sitting there, he was on stream, and his wife was actually getting their daughter ready for a bath. And of course, kids run around.
Yeah.
And she ran into daddy's house, into daddy's room where he was streaming, and she wasn't dressed. It's like, it's a 3-year-old.
Well,
who's thinking anything, But
and if you are thinking anything like that about a 3-year-old, go get help.
Yeah, or slap yourself. But
should be the ones getting
then Twitch banned because they said it was like nudity or whatever of a minor, and it was like he was
a toddler
sitting there playing a racing game, and his daughter ran in, and he picked her up, and he was like, "Hey, it's time for your bath," She's laughing, and then he just gives his daughter back to his wife and goes back to his game. Nothing, everyone was like, "Oh, cute, haha." And then Twitch banned him for 3 days. It was like, the fuck, this is unnecessary censorship. Now, I've actually talked to my wife about that, and she was like, well, there are pretty sick people out there, which there are, but I don't see why Twitch had to get involved and start banning him when he didn't do anything wrong.
Right, and it goes beyond these platforms, even Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it.
Twix.
That nothing really improved in that regard since Musk took over. Shout out to Melee Games. Not too long ago, their account got banned out of nowhere. And when they were looking to find out why, they wouldn't give them any, X wouldn't give them any real reason. It was just, oh, you violated multiple guidelines. What guidelines? And they had to file an appeal multiple times. Eventually, they did get their chance. They did get their account back. And it was probably just some numbnuts that didn't like them that was just flat, that was just reporting them for no fucking reason. But it's like, again, it's just so opaque. It's like, why am I being dinged? Because you know what you did. No, I didn't. What did I do? Multiple violations of what?
Mm-hmm. There was a girl that was actually banned on Twitch. I want to say like within the last 2 or 3 years. She, she doesn't wear a lot of skimpy outfits or anything, because there are people that do that on Twitch, and if you do, cool, I got no problem with you. But she wears boy shorts. And one day, because she actually had a fake leg, and she took it off and was showing the audience, everything for it. And somebody banned her for like crude and indecent stuff because she was actually seen taking her leg off through, yeah, they tried banning her for that. Wait, I'm sorry, that wasn't Twitch. That was that happened on YouTube.
Yeah.
But there was also a girl on Twitch who she wore boy shorts, and she like just kind of moved a little bit to, how I've been kind of readjusting here.
Yeah.
She did that, and then the camera just happened to see like up the shorts just a little bit, but it's like she was wearing boxers too.
Yeah, and
and it wasn't even sexual. She was just moving, and then somebody banned that, and then she got banned for 3 days, and then Twitch said, "Oh, our bad."
Yeah, and Junior brings up a good point. A lot of Twitch bans are more recent reports are reports from viewers and AI bans. So yeah, it's not necessarily, yeah, it's like there's like these algorithms in AI, for like Twitch and YouTube that are so overtuned, so sensitive to anything, so anything remote, it doesn't care about the context. And so that's why they needs to be more human view. And there are humans that do it, but it's just like they aren't. It's just further down the chain. They're there for when you file an appeal, but the fact is, like, they just need to. If they want to keep using these, algorithms and such, they need to kind of redefine the parameters because they are just set way too high.
And that happened to me on Facebook. Actually, I put up a meme that that meme from Office Space where they're like, yeah, if everyone could just, and then whatever, for it says that would be great. They actually banned me for promoting self-harm one day because I put up that meme, and it said, bosses be like, yeah, we're going to be short-staffed forever, so if you could just work yourselves to death, that would be great. And they pinged me for self-harm.
And so that was
promoting
probably
self-harm.
And I'm probably like, some AI that saw the words yourself and death and we're like, self-harm.
Yeah. But then I tried fighting it, where they're supposed to send it to their review. I'm not even kidding. I sent it to review, and less than 30 seconds later, I got a thing saying that, nope, I had a warning on my account saying, we all make mistakes, but you didn't mean to break the terms and conditions. But if it happens again, you could face a 7-day ban. I'm like,
Don't patronize me. I don't shop here.
So, but yeah, so this is a topic that's going to take multiple days to go through. We are going to talk more about this next week. We're probably going to go more into does censorship infringe on free speech? We've kind of touched on that here, but we'll go more into a deep dive on that.
Yeah, so we've been going almost 2 hours already, and I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface of this.
Yes.
We might not go, I don't know how deep we're going to go with all of this, but it definitely warrants a second episode.
Definitely. But yeah, so we're going to go, because I know Charlie's probably, you got to get ready for work.
I'm just starving.
Okay, well, Charlie needs to eat, so we're going to get going here. But yep, and I will probably be. Yeah. Oh, you're having pizza tonight?
Maybe.
I can't eat pizza unless I'm wearing Ninja Turtle stuff. That's not true. But anyway, we will definitely be on here later on our own personal pages doing our own thing with streaming. I'll be streaming some games probably later tonight and tomorrow. Charlie, are you going to be streaming? I know
probably not, but I am going to be I do have a plan to do something at some point on Tuesday on my own channel. Goes nowhere, does nothing.
Okay.
Found on mainly streaming to YouTube, Twitch, and Kick right now, but I also have socials on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yep.
Just search Goes Nowhere, Does Nothing.
Yep, and you can always find Gamers Got a Game on all the socials, with the exception of Threads. I should say that because I'm not on Threads yet.
Just Threads.
I saw people get excited about it for the first week that it was out, and then nothing.
Like, is this the Twitter killer? Nope.
That was the thing. Everyone was like, the Twitter killer, Threads. Oh, this is so amazing. What else?
Everyone's so desperate to get off of Twitter, but there's nothing that comes close, and then people will they'll always come back.
Mm-hmm.
And people that keep complaining about it is one small change happens, like, oh, I'm leaving Twitter. Here's my blue sky. It's like, just fucking leave already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. But yep, you can always find me on my socials as well. Gamers Got a Game -G3 on Facebook. Streamers Got a Stream -G3 for the streamers. And then you can also find me on Instagram and X or Twitter, Twix, whatever they're calling it now.
I like Twix.
Yep, with @Cyclops Muller, capital C, capital M. So, and every Saturday we've got this show 10:30 a.m. So, and I'm excited. There's a lot of games being released this month.
Oh yeah, we're finally into that.
They just started. Assassin's Creed just came out, so
it's on the way.
All right. Well, we'll talk to everybody later. All right. And remember, haters gonna hate and gamers got a game.
Pizza out.